What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. Okay, very, very excited to have the lead dog over at the SEC Network, which is a channel that I watch a lot. I've watched more SEC baseball than I have Major League Baseball over the last couple of years. You turn it on, there's 25,000 people at these games. Dari, Nowkhah, who's Oklahoma Sooners, are joining the big boys and coming to the SEC. So how's everything going, Dari?
It's great, man. It's great. Hey, you're right about SEC baseball too. It's I fell out of love years ago with Major League Baseball. It's just too many games, and frankly, SEC baseball is so doggone exciting, and it feels like there's something on the line all the time. So I'm glad you're watching, man. I'm glad you're watching. But yeah, everything's good. It's funny. We just taped an interview with Brent Venables, and it was the first one we've had with him on SEC Now, and it'll be on a little bit later. But look, he's fired up. I'm fired up. We just, finally, we're less than 2 weeks out. It feels like it's been a long time coming, but that we say that every August.
Well, obviously, it just means more. And, from Texas East, college football has always been a really big deal. And listen, I'm a West Coast guy, so I remember when those rumors about Texas and Oklahoma joining the Pac-12, which obviously did not happen. The Pac-12 doesn't exist. But what's, being at SEC Media Days, now that Venables has really kind of settled into his job, obviously Sark last year, does it feel even bigger? The 12-team playoff has changed college football, but
yeah,
it feels like this conference is in the peak of its powers, does it not?
Yeah, and I think like where we're going to see it and maybe feel it the most is every single Saturday, especially when you get into conference play, because with those two teams, we just have one more big game. Mississippi State, Texas is a big game that we didn't have before. I'm just using anybody and anybody against anybody in this league. It feels like we've got one more, big game. So, it's not just the Red River game in October. That's going to be huge, obviously. And it's awesome that, that's an SEC game now, but it adds to the depth, right? We're in a sport where depth is important. Depth in the conference is important. And we're going 4, 5, 6, 7 deep in regular season games that you don't want to miss. So I think every single Saturday we're going to feel it. Every single Friday night when we do our SEC Now show, we're going to feel it because we got one more big game to preview. We got one more big game to talk about. So Saturdays are going to be pretty amazing around here.
Before we dive into some specific questions about obviously the high end of the conference, I kind of have a theory with the SEC. Obviously, football has always been a really big deal in that region, but Nick Saban, to me, made the conference cool nationally, and obviously the finances and the success. And listen, I'm from the Sacramento area, and I can't tell you how many parents of family friends I know that have sent their kids to Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. I mean, these kids that historically would have gone to San Diego State or Arizona State are now going to the South. Obviously, financially, I'm a big golf guy. I'm sure you guys have talked about that Alabama golf facility, the other programs, the money they're paying college basketball coaches separate from just Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
And so Saban, the money that he's brought in, but the coolness factor of making it like NFL light is kind of not really debatable at this point, is it?
No. And it's not, it's just like, I think that it's a league that, there's a coolness factor for sure. I mean, and anybody that ever wanted to complain about the amount of money that Alabama paid him, John, over the years is out of their mind, because what he's brought the University of Alabama and the state in itself is 100-fold what they've paid him. But it's a league that's full of really kind of fun, cool characters. And it's not just football. You talk about that influx from the West Coast here. Look at softball. Look at baseball rosters in the SEC, especially softball. I mean, the Pac used to be the kings or the queens of college softball, and now not only is the Pac gone, but that hasn't been applicable for a decade or more. It's here now, and you look at rosters and you see all of these great players from the state of California and Arizona and so on and so forth. that have made their way here. One of my best friends, Kayla Bro, is an assistant at Alabama. She was an analyst with us on the SEC network for a number of years after she was a 3-time All-American at Bama. She's from Eugene, Oregon. The Shipman sisters, Maddie and Allie, both ended up one at Tennessee and then one at Tennessee and then Alabama. They're Southern Californians. Like, it's a cool place to come play sports. It is, because the coaches are great. The characters in this league are great. The weather doesn't suck. Not that it does on the West Coast either. I understand that, but there's a level of importance and I mean, they put so much into this. Like, the resources are just, it seems infinite, even in sports like baseball and softball. Why wouldn't you come? And then, oh, by the way, if I can like toot our own horn just a wee little bit, like, you can leave mom and dad in Orange County. They'll still see every damn one of your games because of ESPN, the SEC Network, SEC Network Plus, or ESPN Plus. They're not going to miss you. They won't be here in person all the time, but you're going to get to see, mom and dad are going to get to see you play whatever sport it is 9 times out of every 10 games you play, because they can find it. So there's a lot of reasons I think people are coming this way.
Well, obviously, the elephant in the room in this conference is Saban retires. DeBoer, his resume speaks for itself. I mean, the guy is like less than 15 career losses, but he's not from the South. That I've known Jim McElwain for a long time. He was a non-Southern guy, went to Florida, was winning, and got run out of town. You never want to be the guy following the legend, they say, but DeBoer just wins everywhere he goes. You've talked to him. You obviously follow that program closely at the SEC Network. What's the vibe? I saw a picture of the 2 offices. Saban's office, he completely remodeled it. Did you see that?
No.
DeBoer's new office. It's,
No.
Saban had this kind of regal, old school, just like mob looking office. DeBoer's is like modern. It just looks completely different. And it's just clearly a different vibe. He's a different person.
Yeah.
But he can coach. So that's, at the end of the day, what matters most down there, right? Can you win?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if he wins, he'll be fine. I don't necessarily. I think, we thought the fit was weird. Look, Dan Mullen had Mississippi State #1 in the country at one point, and the dude's from New Hampshire. Brian Kelly.
But he had coached at Florida for a while with
Urban. That's true. No, he did. I don't think anybody in Baton Rouge is running Brian Kelly out because he's a Northeasterner, from Massachusetts or wherever. Like, I understand to some degree the idea of fit, but Nick Saban's West Virginia by way of Kent State, Ohio, and so on and so forth. And so he wasn't necessarily from this neck of the woods. I get why people would say that, but ultimately, if you win, you win. I don't think that'll be an issue. And look, DeBoer, I think, became a fan. Alabamans became a fan of Kalen DeBoer the second Jalen Milroe stayed, the second he kind of slammed the brakes on the departures. He got a whole bunch of people to decide to stay. And when you look, like you said, 12 losses in 10 years is just, I don't care where you are, you're still beating your own peers at whatever level you are. The record, his accomplishments speak for itself. He'll be just fine as long as he wins, and I don't have any reason to think he won't. I mean, I don't know about you. Like, were you surprised at all that Alabama's sitting in the top 5 in the AP poll, that they were third in the preseason SEC standing? Like, expectations haven't really diminished at all with
and Saban. They shouldn't. I mean, they're just hiring a guy that beat Texas in a Final Four game, has beat Dan Lanning 3 straight times. I think the question from a football standpoint is, at Fresno State, is last year he had Jake Haener, who's an NFL guy, throws the ball. You go, obviously, Penix, prototypical pocket passer. Jalen's not really that. So the question is how he's run his offense. Ryan Grubb, who was a huge part, obviously gets stolen away from Seattle. Now, he had a guy that was also with him that kind of took that spot, I think. But that to me is the question mark, at least on this specific season. I think big picture, he'll be fine. What are there some question marks with him and Jalen Milroe from just a on the field standpoint?
I don't think so. I think, it's crazy. When Milroe came out of high school, he was considered a quote unquote pocket passer. If you look at the ratings, it's PP. I didn't, which surprised me a little bit when I looked at that. Obviously, what he does with his legs is what makes him Jalen Milroe. But I do think Milroe can be a very good passer. He's a very accurate long ball passer. The question is going to be a lack of experience in some ways at receiver with Isaiah Bond, obviously at Texas, but there is talent galore in that receiver room.
Yeah.
Offensive line, I don't necessarily get overly concerned about. I think Alabama's going to, I think defensively, they're probably going to be a little bit ahead of the offense for, in the early part of the season. But I think they can win games with Jalen Milroe, and I think they win games because of Jalen Milroe. And Jalen had the opportunity to leave. Jalen could have very well gone somewhere else, but he met Kalen. He liked Kalen. He had made the determination. Like I've told my mom, I'm going to get a degree from Alabama. Obviously, that fluctuated a little bit with Saban's retiring, but the second he met Kalen DeBoer, he said, "I'm going to give this guy a chance." And they're really, really tight now. And no, I think he'll thrive in his system.
With Saban gone, with Dabo hitting a little bit of a lull, it's clear Kirby's kind of the king of college football. And it was crazy. I was looking, Carson Beck in this modern day football, sat behind Stetson Bennett for a couple of years. Guys, it doesn't really happen as much anymore. Yeah. And a lot of people think he can be the number one quarterback. Georgia, it's weird. Obviously, they were either two national title teams. The NFL players speak for themselves, but the schedule sometimes wasn't great. This year, open with Clemson, at Bama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. There's a decent chance they're damn good. Still could lose a couple games, right? What's your thoughts on the program and their vibes headed in as the preseason number one?
Yeah, I totally get them being number one. And that goes into what obviously when you have a quarterback that could be the number one pick in the draft, and he looks the part of an NFL of a really successful NFL quarterback, and he's got the demeanor of a successful NFL quarterback, and he proved himself a year ago. I have no doubt that they're capable of winning a national championship again, but it's not going to be easy. Like if Georgia runs the table, that's the best season in the history of college football.
Oh my God!
They got to go to Ole Miss. I think they're going to see Ole Miss twice. Like I got Ole Miss in Atlanta this year. Could you imagine like if Georgia has to play them twice and Texas on the road and Alabama on the road? It's almost unfair. So, but they're really, really good. And again, 12-team playoff. If they go 10-2, do you keep them out? I don't think anybody would keep them out. And once they're in, look out, right? They could get in as a 10 seed that lost 2 games and run the table. So yeah, I would expect, I don't think they run the table this year. I think they lose a game or two, but I still think in the end, they're one of the last 2 standing.
You guys talk about this a lot. Over under between the Big Ten and the SEC to me is like 8 teams, but specifically on the SEC, if you had to preseason get, are you going 4? Do you think 5 is inconceivable? Seems 4 is more likely than 3, right?
I feel 4 is the right number to guess at this point. It's hard. Boy, 5. One, I think the committee would have a hell of a hard time putting 5 in. Because I don't think they want to hear it from everybody else. That seems, tough. But I think 4 is a good number. It also depends. Like, does the Big 12 just eat each other alive? Like a lot of people think they would, right? How many Big 12 teams with 3 losses could you put in?
Well, to me, the Big 12 preseason is getting 1. I have them chalked for 1.
Okay. So then you got ACC. What are you looking at there?
Best case 2.
2. So now you've got 9 spots open. You give a group of 5 1. Now you've got 8 spots between those 2 leagues. I'd have a hard time not thinking it would be 4 and 4. But if that's the case, like if there are 8 spots between those 2 leagues, then 5 becomes very conceivable. I don't think they want it, but it becomes conceivable. Yeah.
The 4 right now, obviously Georgia, everyone would put in. Ole Miss, very sexy team to put in. Bama, LSU, kind of that group. Tennessee, potential. Missouri. Like Texas. If you're picking your 4, Texas. Yeah, I would say Georgia and Texas, most people would put in.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of the group of that 3 or 4 teams, right?
I kind of like Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri. Missouri's got this incredibly manageable schedule, but one that they'll be highly punished if they lose more than 2 ball games.
Yeah.
Because it's a schedule that they should absolutely be able to make their way through with 10 or 11 wins. So I think Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, and Missouri would be if I had to pick 4 now, those would be the 4. And Alabama on that cusp. LSU, I don't know how much I buy them yet. I'd like to see them play defense first. And I think Blake Baker was a great hire, and we know they've got personnel over there. Tennessee, let's see. I kind of think they get popped in Norman in their first conference game, and We'll see. We'll see. I know people love Nico. I'd like to see a little bit more Nico before I start anointing them a playoff team.
Won't BK take a little shit if he's not in this 12? I mean, this is what you going into
Probably.
year 3. They're paying him $95 million. They hired him
Yeah.
to, and he said to win national championships. He can't make a 12-team playoff at LSU.
That how big is that game in Vegas on that Sunday night?
Well, I
September.
don't think it's that big because I think they're going to
No?
kill him
Okay. All right. They better kill him.
or kill
But
him.
if
I
they
mean,
can,
win it by 15, 20
that's
points.
fine. Well,
Shove
I
him
don't even
around.
care if they win it by one.
Yeah,
A
I think they
loss
win.
there
I,
stings in a big, big way. I think a win there. Neither team has shown us that they're going to play defense. I like LSU's personnel better, but you got two unproven quarterbacks. In what Miller Moss on one side and Nuss on the other, who's been waiting his turn, like Carson Beck did. And a lot of people in this league like Garrett Nussmeier a lot. I think they're mirror images of one another with maybe a little bit more depth on the LSU side, but I think it could go either way. Like, I mean, I'd like to think like you do that LSU kind of goes in and wins by 2, 3 touchdowns, but I don't know if they can't stop anybody and they've got this scoring pressure with Garrett Nussmeier having to produce on every drive. I don't know if I'm ready to say that yet.
well, I was texting with a scouting buddy today. He likes Nuss. I mean, he's been at practice. I think there's a lot of positive vibes. I mean, Lincoln begged out of that game, and Brian said no,
Yeah.
which I think is. I
Yeah.
mean, is that a
Sounds
substantiated story?
sounds
I've been
about
running
right.
with it.
That
Yeah.
sounds about
In
right.
Lane, I was texting when I was texting the scouting buddy about the SEC, knowing you were coming on. I said most talented team in the SEC, or beside Georgia and Texas. And he said Ole Miss is right up
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Jackson Dart, a lot of people like him. Obviously, the transfer portal king. Pretty sure the stat, right? First time in Ole Miss history, back-to-back double-digit win seasons. Lane
Yes,
beat Brian
correct.
Kelly last year, and I thought one of the more entertaining games of the year. It
Yeah.
almost feels like, is there too much hype behind the squad? You, like me, like most people, like Ole Miss playoffs.
I
That's
love him. I love him. I love him. I love him. I love him in the playoff. I love him getting to Atlanta for the very first time. I love him. I love
could
both
they
sides.
win the SEC?
I think they could. I absolutely think they could. Let's see. Look, when Georgia plays them in the regular season, that's going to tell us everything we need to know. I think. I think Ole Miss is. I love Dart's demeanor, his relationship with Lane. Trey Harris is a stud on the outside. I know it hurts losing a stud tailback to Columbus, but I think Bentley is more than capable of being the lead guy there on that side. I like the offensive line. Defensively, you talked about the portal and the additions that he's made all over the defensive front and that front seven. I think they're really, really, really good. And this isn't like, I would. They're more talented than Missouri. They've got a tougher schedule than Missouri. I put them both in the playoff. The difference is Ole Miss to me has been tested, and Lane has been tested for years now and understands what it's like to go week in and week out and have a level of success in this league. Drink hasn't yet. Last year, they kind of came out of nowhere. So for that reason, I like Ole Miss a little bit more if I'm kind of comparing two schools with high expectations that they've never really had before. But it's also why I think Ole Miss is a conference and frankly national championship contender because Lane understands that grind. Lane has been there, he's lived it, he gets it. I think Dart has lived it and gets it. And it's a team that isn't backing down from anybody. Nobody's going to walk in there just because you have that G on your helmet. They couldn't care less. If you got a number on your helmet, they don't really care. Like they know they're good. And I feel like Ole Miss is that team that I wouldn't be shocked at the end of the year if they're raising a trophy.
Me and Coward were talking about it. He's kind of established himself as a top 5 coach, and he has a lot of success. To me, he wins 10 plus games and they're in the playoffs. It won't even be, you can't even argue it. And then the question starts, weirdness already going on in Florida. There's just, who knows how that thing plays out. The Arkansas situation, clearly they got a lot of money. Do they get to a position or now all these schools have so much money that if he feels comfortable there, he can stay? Or is this going to start being a conversation? Because it feels like schools not scared off, but, clearly not been super aggressive based on his resume. Does that change if he just hammers an 11-win season? He's in the playoffs, and it's just he's going to fend people. Ole Miss got to fend people off to keep him.
I think they're always going to have to. I mean, I think they're always going to have to, right? I mean, his track record says He's kind of always kind of looking maybe for that next thing. I hope not, man. Like
It's
I
fun at
know
Ole Miss.
what's that?
It's fun at Ole Miss with him,
It's
I
fun,
think.
man. He's got everything he could ever want there. He's got clearly they've got resources. They clearly are better positioned in NIL than maybe people assumed that they were. I don't know the numbers. I don't know where they rank in the SEC, but they've got more than enough to get the job done. Clearly, right? Um, that's a special place. Like it really is that has never experienced what they could potentially experience now. I hope he never goes anywhere. Like I hope he never goes anywhere. It's hard to it's hard to really know like the level of interest of other places. When Auburn was
Yeah.
looking, right, they ended up with Freeze and there was all this talk about Lane this and Lane that. I don't know. Like I talked to a lot of like people in that Auburn program and decision makers, and they were never really as interested in Lane as we were made to believe. So, are people scared about a lack of loyalty? Are people just kind of being told, look, I'm not going anywhere? I don't know what the answer is, but I'd love to see Lane stay there for 10 years and get them to six playoff berths and make them nationally relevant every year because he's a lot of fun in that place. He'd be fun anywhere, but that's a pretty cool place to have Lane Kiffin, I think.
I would agree. Okay, I'll get you out of here on this. Texas and Oklahoma. We'll start with Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously with the money they have supporting that program and Sark, they've been recruited. I mean, their roster is loaded, but they come into this conference kind of with a bullseye on their back of like, okay, let's see, guys, and they're going to get everyone. It's like almost. I mean, obviously they were right there to win a national championship
Yeah.
last year, right till the end in the Final Four. How do you think that's going to go? Because there's a ton of hype. The roster's
Mm-hmm.
loaded, but they are going to get even the random teams they play on their schedule in the
Yeah.
SEC's best shot, and the atmospheres on the road for them. It's going to be bananas, right?
While I think they probably should be a playoff team, I'm real careful to have some national championship expectations for them. They are really talented, but man, oh man, John, like this grind in this league, they've never seen it. Same with OU. They've just never, ever experienced what they're going to get week in and week out. And yeah, the game in Ann Arbor in week two, Michigan might have the best defense in America. So, like, that's not going to be a walk in the park. Are they going to have a loss on their schedule before they get into conference play? They certainly could, but it's just a grind. Like, I need to see Texas navigate it before I anoint them too much. I need to see OU navigate this first, and that's the look, you remember when Utah was in the Mountain West and they made a transition to the Pac-12, and we know where Utah left the Pac-12. They were obviously the most consistent program over probably the last 3 or 4 seasons, but it took some time.
Yeah.
The Mountain West to the Pac-12 then, I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not what I see in the Big 12 to the SEC. I think it's a similar type move. And there's just I just think it's going to take a little bit of time to navigate it to the point where we say Sark is where Texas is going to be a national championship team this year. I'm just not ready to go there. But they
See,
have
that's
all the teams and they have all the resources and they have all the talent. And I get that. It's just something else that it takes to be able to navigate this.
I completely agree with you. And that's where I think on the flip side, Oklahoma kind of gets to fly in under the radar. Not everyone's anointing them,
Yeah.
and they get to kind of come in with a little chip on their shoulder. Oregon, so high right now on Dylan Gabriel, but didn't Oklahoma kind of tell him, we're going to go to Jackson Arnold? So
Yeah.
see you later, buddy.
Yeah.
Now, anytime you get a first year quarterback, but I think Oklahoma, listen, you go 8-4, but you knock someone off around the way. Like that's kind of what I expect, where everyone's gunning for Texas. Oklahoma kind of gets to cruise in like they're Mississippi State or something.
They're really good. Like they're really good. They Oklahoma might have a top 3 group of receivers in the SEC. They've got a quarterback that nobody talks about because he's relatively unproven, but he's got as much talent as anybody in this league that plays that position. And defensively, like, this isn't Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch defense. Brent has done a wonderful job through the portal and in general high school recruiting, but mostly through the portal of building a unit that is going to be, I think, top half of this SEC. And you want chip on the shoulder. When was the last time OU was picked 8th in a conference? I was in college there in the late 90s when they were god awful with John Blake as head coach. Like they have not had, yet 16th in the country in the AP. It's pretty wild to see that, but they're really talented. Like they'll beat a couple of teams they're not supposed to beat. I don't know if it'll be in Oxford early in the season. I don't know if it'll be in Dallas against Texas, but they certainly could. They've beaten Texas teams that are better than them on paper dozens of times. So, yeah, and they OU I think is going to be better than people think for sure.
So on that quarterback, Carson Beck, obviously Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, a lot of hype. We've
Yeah,
seen Oklahoma, Rattler, ton of hype, didn't live up to it. Caleb, opposite, ton of hype, clear he was a star.
yeah,
Kind of feels somewhat similar of hype machine behind this young guy. You
yeah,
follow the program closely. I think you were there. I saw some on YouTube. You were at the program.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on the hype machine behind this young quarterback?
Well, I think one thing is he doesn't buy into the hype. That dude's really humble. Like he's really humble. He will work. He's in early, out late. He has an incredible relationship with his receivers. Watch for a guy, Deion Burks, Purdue transfer that's at Oklahoma now. That guy he could be a first team all SEC guy. He and Jackson have a really good relationship to this particular point. The question is, can he get the protection he's going to need? And the offensive line is probably their biggest outstanding question right now. But that dude himself, that he has grown. He's really, really smart. He works really, really hard, and he's as accurate as I've heard people compare him and his accuracy to Sam Bradford, who to me is the most accurate quarterback that ever went through that program, and one of the
Yeah.
most accurate I've ever seen. So, I think he's got all the tools and all the makings, and he's in the right headspace. So I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about going to a big time college football game this year, and the easiest one, in the SEC can be hard to get to coming from Scottsdale, but the Red River rivalry in Dallas,
Yeah,
I would imagine you'd recommend that game, wouldn't you?
anytime. And I would recommend that 100. In this league in the SEC, there's a little bit of arrogance. Like I'm not
Yeah, should be. It's earned.
there's the Iron Bowl, there's the Egg Bowl, and there's Georgia, Florida. And in many ways, people don't think there's anything else. There's going to be real awakening, I think, to people when they get a good up close look at Oklahoma, Texas. I think it's awesome. Yes, I would say go to OU, Texas. You know what? You want to go experience something in Norman? I'm sure you probably have before. But the first conference game with Tennessee coming in and Josh Heupel coming back to Norman, that's going to be special, man. Like that. That's one on the schedule I'd put a little circle around too.
Okay, Dari, I appreciate your time and exciting times, in the SEC. So enjoy it and watch Oklahoma take down some people along the way.
I would love to, John. Good talking to you, man. I appreciate you reaching out.
Oh, no problem. Have a good one. See ya.
Thank you.